Everybody had something to say over the weekend because of the huddle with Caitlin, Stephanie White. We've got Twitter just going out. Everybody's losing their mind. You were there. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just
There are moments in sport that do not need a caption. Moments that speak entirely for themselves. Raw, uncomfortable, and impossible to take back. They unfold in front of cameras, before thousands of fans, and across the entire internet. Once they happen, they are out there forever. Indiana Fever fans just witnessed one of those moments, and the conversation it sparked has not stopped since.
Noticed they were trying to pick on Caitlin a little bit on defensive end. She was getting called for some fouls that, fouls aren't fun. She got in some foul trouble. Our team got into some foul trouble, and that's just all it was. I think that's part of the game. There's frustrations that rise, and decisions have to be made. And ultimately, this wasn't something that carried on. This is in the moment, something that happened, and not something that is talked about now in our locker room, talked about even later on in the game. That's just something that happened. And unfortunately, Caitlin's got a camera on her 24/7. And so you see every little thing, but this happens almost every day in women's basketball. So not something that we're worried about it.
But here is what people are sleeping on amid all this noise. While the internet was busy dissecting every frame of that sideline exchange, while talk show hosts weighed in, and while certain legends picked sides, one person was standing quietly and firmly right where she has always stood, right behind Caitlin Clark. That person is Lexie Hull.
White is an abomination. An absolute abomination. We were sold a false bill of goods. We were sold hope, and in return we got nope. Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark seen yelling back and forth at each other on the bench. Stephanie White doesn't seem to realize it's not Caitlin Clark's defense as much as it is her terrible schemes defensively. Her inability to adjust defensively. Her inability to adjust.
Lexie Hull is not the loudest voice in the building. She is not the kind of player who steps in front of cameras and makes declarations designed to trend on social media. That is not who she is. What she is, and what she has been from the very beginning of her time alongside Caitlin Clark, is loyal, steady, and the kind of teammate who does not need an audience to show up for someone she cares about. She shows up because she genuinely cares. And right now, Caitlin Clark needs exactly that kind of person in her corner.
White, this team is fucking garbage. Garbage. This team is trash, bro. This coach is trash. This is sabotage, man. This is straight up sabotage. There's no way around it. There's no way around it, bro. This team is garbage, bro. This team is more garbage than the bag I'm in, man. How you go get bumped? Bro, we was down 25, damn near 30 versus the Portland Fire. Their first 100-point game in franchise history. Stephanie White's ass needs to be fired right now. Right fucking now. Get her the fuck up out of here. I'm sick of it.
Because what happened in that Portland game was not a small thing. It was not a moment that disappears with a single press conference and a couple of carefully chosen words. It was a flashpoint. And the way people, both inside and outside this organization, respond to it is going to say everything about what this franchise Let's make sure everyone is fully caught up. The Indiana Fever were on the road against Portland, and the game was not going the way it needed to go. Tensions were high. During a timeout in the huddle, Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White were seen in what can only be described as a heated back and forth. Based on the body language on the sideline, Clark said something that White did not appreciate, and White's response was immediate. She told Clark to sit down, pulled her from the rotation, and put rookie Raven Johnson on the...
So right now, Stephanie is pointing at Caitlin. She's looking right at her, so she has to be talking about her. And if you look at her mouth, like she says defense, right? And Caitlin Clark, she looked like she's saying, I'm putting my hand up, and they're still calling the foul. That's what it looked like. Stephanie White didn't like that. She pointed at Raven and said, hey, man, you get in here.
Clark stood up, shook her head, and for a brief second looked like she was about to walk out of that huddle entirely. She caught herself because she is a professional and understood that walking out would have become the only thing anyone talked about for the next 2 weeks. So she stayed, sat back down, and held it in, and the internet captured every single second of it.
There's frustration. I think we noticed they were trying to pick on Caitlin a little bit on defensive end.
It is not a typical Fever rotation. Stephanie White be so upset about the pull Caitlin out of the game. We need lip readers. No, it's clearly Caitlin, stop fouling. Caitlin, I'm putting my hands up. Like, I think everybody knows when that happened. Caitlin just picked up her 4th foul, and she's going to pull her from the game. And she's basically giving out about Caitlin fouling, and Caitlin's like, I have my hands up, I have my hands up. And then Stephanie White is just having none of it, and Caitlin Clark's pissed off because she knows she didn't foul, and she's clapping back at her coach. It's two people pissed off.
And when the dust settled, when the cameras were waiting for someone to speak honestly, Lexie Hull stepped forward, not to create drama or throw anyone under the bus, but to make it absolutely clear where she stands when it comes to Caitlin Clark. Because here's what people need to understand about Lexie Hull and Caitlin Clark. This is not a surface-level teammate relationship built on proximity and matching uniforms. These two have built something real. Hull was one of the first people in that locker room to genuinely embrace Clark, not because Clark was famous, or because of the attention she brought to the franchise, but because Hull recognized who Clark is as both a competitor and a person. Hull re-signed with the Indiana Fever, in large part because of that bond. The two of them announced it together, and Clark posted about it. Because when you have someone
just re-signed with the Fever today, ladies and gentlemen. A third of the Trace Lake is back. Half of the Blonde Bombers back. Lexie with the defense. Lexie with the hustle. Lexie popping them threes. One of Clark's best friends. Let's go. See Fever again. Y'all just gotta relax and let the front office do their thing. So we got Clark. We got Mitchell. We got Boston. We got Lexie, the big 4 is locked in for 2026 Fever gang.
So when Hull addresses the exchange between Clark and Stephanie White, it is not coming from a place of drama chasing. It is coming from genuine loyalty to someone she has chosen over and over again to stand beside. Hull understands what Clark is carrying right now. She understands what it means to be in that locker room, in that practice facility, and to navigate a coaching relationship that the entire world seems to have an opinion about. Not conditionally, not only when it is convenient, but always, through tough losses, through sideline tension, and through every moment where the pressure is amplified to a level most players in this league will never experience. Lexie Hull is there. She is not going anywhere.
From what you're seeing, what's happening in Indianapolis?
Right now, it's frustration, and unfortunately, it's boiling over, and it's being seen. It's one thing to have it behind closed doors, but when it spills over and when the coach has to basically say, hey, you know what, Caitlin, enough is enough. This is too disruptive.
Now let's talk about the other side of this conversation. Because while Lexie Hull is quietly holding the line for her teammate, certain voices in the basketball world have been doing something very different. Cheryl Miller, a genuine legend of the sport and a Hall of Famer whose opinion carries enormous weight, watched the same footage as everyone else. And her interpretation was not exactly what Caitlin Clark's supporters were hoping to hear. Miller's take was essentially that Clark's behavior during that timeout was disruptive and had escalated in a way coaches cannot allow. According to her, White did what coaches are sometimes required to do, make a decision and send a message. Miller put it plainly. It's one thing to do it behind closed doors. It's another when it spills out, and the coach essentially says, you know what, Caitlin? This is enough.
Not like the best lip reader, but I feel like Stephanie White did say defense a couple times. And Caitlin Clark was in foul trouble this game, and obviously we know how things are being called. So I think it is a lot of frustration, but it's also like not that crazy. This isn't the first time we've seen this. It doesn't have some deeper meaning to it. I've had moments like that with coaches. I think it speaks to relationships, player-coach relationships. Like shout out Brian Agler. You could say anything to that man, and you could keep it moving. And then I had other coaches where maybe you couldn't, and you have to learn each other in that.
Sue Bird was also on that segment, and she at least tried to pump the brakes on the narrative spiral. She agreed with Miller that frustration was at the root of it, but she also framed it as something that naturally emerges in competitive player-coach relationships. I think it's frustration, Bird said. It doesn't have some deep meaning to it. I've had moments like this with coaches. Here's the problem with that framing, though. Respectfully, the issue is what happened immediately after. Because when Bird had moments of frustration with her coaches, did those coaches bench her in front of a national audience to make a point about who is in charge? Or did they work through it behind closed doors and put their best player back on the floor? That is the distinction, the part that doesn't get smoothed over by saying, this is just player coach.
At this point, words cannot change my mind what I see. Okay, I see better than I hear. You can say, oh, they have a great relationship. Nah, I've seen too much of this nonsense. That's not what a coach who has someone's back does. You know, I don't see enough from Stephanie White having Caitlin Clark's back. I really don't. I think Caitlin Clark has Stephanie White's back more than the other.
And this brings us to something people keep circling around but rarely say directly enough. Caitlin Clark is a major reason this league is on so many televisions right now, at the level it is. Full stop. She is one of the reasons WNBA games are airing in prime time. She is one of the reasons casual sports fans, who couldn't name 5 women's basketball players a couple of years ago, are now watching, following, and buying tickets. She walked into a league that has been fighting for visibility for decades and helped push the conversation forward in a significant way. The viewership numbers are not subtle, and her impact is part of that reality. She did not do it alone. The league has always had elite talent and still does, but she helped open a door that was not this wide open before, and the people inside this league, including those with decision-making power, need to treat that with the respect and seriousness it deserves. Because right now, from the outside looking in, it does not always appear that they are.
She's over there. Her magic. It was planned. Yes. We're not twinning for nothing. Are we straight on?
Yeah, straight on the start, and then we'll rotate.
Lexie Hull understands this. She has seen it up close. She has watched what Caitlin Clark does to a building, to a crowd, and to the energy of a fan base that was hungry for exactly this kind of moment. That is why Hull's support for Clark goes beyond friendship and beyond simple locker room loyalty. She recognizes what every thoughtful person inside this league should recognize, that protecting Clark from the noise, from the politics, and from the moments where attention shifts away from basketball matters. You do not grow a fan base to record levels and then give those same fans reasons to question whether decisions are being made based on basketball or ego. Lexie Hull has never needed that explained to her. She has watched it, she has lived it, and she is not about to stand by quietly while the person she has chosen to stand beside is treated like a problem to manage rather than a talent to maximize.
You knew the line when it becomes disruptive, and then when and that's when even Kelsey Mitchell kind of chimed in and said, like, you need to go stand over here and let us just regain the calm in our huddle. When it becomes that disruptive to the entire team, somebody has to.
That is what makes this story worth telling, not the conflict itself, because conflict is everywhere in sports, and not the drama of a sideline exchange or the back and forth of analysts debating whether a substitution was justified. What makes it worth examining is the human layer underneath it. All the teammate who does not need cameras rolling to decide she's going to show up for someone she believes in. Sue Bird framed it as normal player-coach frustration, and maybe on the surface, viewed in isolation from a broadcast booth with comfortable distance, that interpretation is easy to land on. But Lexie Hull does not have that distance. She is in the locker room, in the practice facility, and on that bench every day. And that perspective carries a weight that outside analysis, no matter how experienced, can't fully replicate.
A lot of people getting on her, yapping, doing a whole bunch of unnecessary stuff, acting like they know what they're talking about. We don't care if you used to play basketball way in the 60s or the 70s. You outdated. We don't care if you was playing football in the 90s. You outdated. We don't care when all you Caitlin haters like to say, I played basketball. Listen, majority of everybody that's talking about it played basketball. What are y'all?
Clark is not a disruption. She is a competitor. She is a player who cares deeply about winning, who sees the game at a speed most people cannot follow, and who has enough respect for her team to speak up when something is going wrong. That is not a problem. That is the standard. It is what great players look like up close. And the franchise that learns how to build around that quality, rather than punish it, is the one that will reap the rewards for years to come. She will keep being exactly the kind of teammate Caitlin Clark can look at across that locker room and know, without a single word being exchanged, that she is not in this